Good afternoon and welcome to today's investor forum here at Redeye. Today we're hosting three interesting life science companies that will make their presentations during the day, followed by a little Q&A. So without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome PILA Pharma and its CEO, Gustav H. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Filip. Nice to see you again after the summer. So hello everyone, my name is Gustav Gram. I am the CEO of PILA Pharma. To those of you who don't know, as we are a small biotech company listed on First North here in Stockholm, but we have our headquarters in Malmö in southern Sweden. Those who don't know, our founder and myself, we are actually Danish. So we, of course, are very exposed to a lot of companies in the metabolic sector in these days. And this is also the sector that we are in, since we are doing a novel oral type of treatment for type 2 diabetes and potentially more diseases such as potentially obesity, which is of course very hot right now. So today I will just run through our half-year report, which we released a couple of days ago, and some of the key events that happened during the first half of the year, as well as share a little bit about what we intend to do in the remainder of 2024. So generally speaking, our cash flow is pretty stable. We don't have a very high burn rate. We run a very diligent economic strategy where we don't hire as many people as we need. So generally speaking, our cash flow has been relatively stable in 2024 so far compared to how it was in 2023. Now, I would say that what's important to note here is that during the period, we had a pretty big organizational change where the founder and previous CEO, Ms. Dorte Gram, she transitioned to become the chairman of the company. With this change, a new CEO needed to be found, and the board decided to point to me. So I'm, of course, very flattered with that. With that being said, we have progressed very nicely. We have seen pretty good developments across the board, and we have been preparing for the next clinical trial, which we will commence pretty soon, hopefully. So with that, I will just move on a little bit as well. So here you have more of an overview of the numbers, the key figures. I think what's important to note here is that after the period, we took some more cash in. We conducted a directed shares issue to some existing investors, as well as some new external investors for the total amount of 10 million Swedish krona. Now, this was very important for us because during the spring, we were notified by our clinical experts that by including just a few more participants in the next study, we could get a significant, or at least clinically significant readout on whether our drug can also regulate body weight. So that, of course, is of huge interest to us internally in the team, but equally so to investors. So we assembled a small group of already existing investors and asked them what they thought. And they liked the idea. There was momentum in the share, and we executed it very fast during July. So, of course, what you need to note here is that the outstanding shares are different. There's about 27 million shares now instead of the 23.5. And the bank account, of course, here it states that there's 2.5 million in the bank by the end of the quarter, but you can add another 10 million to this. So a little bit about how our ownership structure is. We have our founder, Dorte Gram, who is, of course, still a major shareholder, and we also have a very big Finnish family office who's very supportive and believes a lot in how we go about things. And he also participated very heavily in this directed shares issue, which we're, of course, very grateful for. But aside from that, it's quite let's say a mixed bag of both private as well as smaller institutional investors, primarily from Sweden and from Denmark. But we are, of course, always looking to expand our catalog of investors, and we hope that many of you will find our company interesting. So a little bit just to those of you who don't know us maybe, but we're a small company based in Malmö, and we're developing novel treatments primarily for metabolic conditions such as obesity and diabetes. We do this developing a TRPV1 antagonist in an oral treatment, so a pill. Now, TRPV1 antagonists have for a long time been associated more with the treatment of pain. Now, you'll see on the orange bar here that we do actually have a track for pain. this is still relatively new and it has not progressed that far yet. So today I want to focus on the blue track here. The hypothesis stems from our founder, Dorte Gram, who was doing her PhD research at Novo Nordisk, where she discovered this new mechanism of action, where if you treat mice with capsaicin, you can actually regulate their diabetes. So this is something new. This was not previously described in the literature, and this has been her life project since. And it's safe to say we've come pretty far. So we are currently in phase 2A. The company has in-licensed and subsequently bought a molecule that we have taken into the clinic into type 2 diabetic people, where we have conducted 2 safety trials, primarily to establish that the drug wasn't toxic to diabetic people who have a lot of other problems to deal with. In these trials, we've seen pretty good safety results. This is based on a single dose of 4 milligram and only of 1 month treatment. In this 1 month treatment, we have, however, seen good trends for reduction of long-term blood glucose, good body weight, good blood sugar regulation, good insulin secretion, and a very high reduction in a biomarker for something called ANP, which is a biomarker for heart failure, so cardiovascular disease. So there seems to be a lot happening. Now, the next thing we will assess, the next trial we will conduct, which was what we've raised capital for, is another phase 2A safety trial, but this time we will actually try and see how high can we go. So this is what we call a dose escalation trial, where we will basically run patients on multiple or triple or quadruple doses to assess what the best level is to proceed with, where we can control the side effects, but get pretty good efficacy as well. Now, in this safety trial, now we mentioned that we raised capital, of course. That allows us to actually expand it so that it's not just a safety trial, but can actually be called an efficacy trial, because we can look at as to whether or not this can also regulate body weight. And of course, we will try and replicate, or at least improve the results on this cardiovascular biomarker, because if it can have a significant reduction in just 1 month treatment with a low dose, we're very hopeful that it can produce a lot better results when we try and tune it up a little bit. Yeah, so this is our founder, Dorte Gram, and we also have a Danish subsidiary which we run a lot of our clinical expenses through. And as I mentioned, the orange bar from before for pain is for an orphan disease in the US, where we have already received orphan drug designation. And this is something that we would like to pursue when we have found the necessary funds to proceed. So why are we doing this with diabetes and obesity? Well, I mean, I think it goes beyond everyone's mind how big of a problem this is on a global basis. I mean, we are talking about hundreds of millions of people that are diagnosed. There's a lot walking around that are undiagnosed as well. But what we see are at least double-digit increases globally over the next couple of years. And of course, this is problematic for a variety of reasons, among others, how expensive it is for health insurance companies, for public institutions that have to cover healthcare, like here in Sweden or in Denmark, but equally so for the lack or the diminishing effect on people's quality of life. So this is, of course, something that we would like to tap into. You can see that there's a smaller increase in the western part of the world, but this is maybe pretty normal, considering we have had a high standard of living for a long time. So we see the bigger increases in third world countries, where they will get access to more westernized food options. And of course, a little bit about the market sizes. I mean, these are of course rough estimates, but I think it's showcasing pretty well how big of markets we're looking at, and they're all somewhat interlinked. So, of course, if you have a very good effect on regulating diabetes, and you have a good effect on, let's say, reducing the risk of certain cardiovascular parameters, and you can also lower the weight, then you have more or less the jackpot, especially if you can deliver it in an oral solution where you can really scale it, produce it, distribute it, store it at relatively cheap cost. So that allows you to really get out and help people around the world where they need it the most. So the reason why we have a little bit more interest in body weight nowadays, of course, there's a huge public interest in this particular field, but we have some data here that is actually unpublished, so we haven't really shown it before. But this is showcasing a mouse model where you have pre-diabetic rats that are treated with a molecule of the same kind, a TRPV1 antagonist, and they are dosed for 2 weeks. And in this model, those who gain or who get the molecule, they don't put on as much weight as the ones that get placebo. Now, this is interesting because this particular model has been used in translational studies as well, and it results in a body weight reduction when it is put into a human model. So we're hopeful that, of course, that this particular molecule, which is very similar structurally to ours, that it gives us a good indication of what we can hopefully expect when we turn up the dose and see how the patients react. Yeah, this was the cardiovascular effect I was talking about before, the ANP, and of course we hope that we can at least replicate this, but very likely we're looking to increase the reduction that we see here. So this is of course very interesting and a very interesting market, and we've seen quite a lot of interest from investors as well as from pharma companies in the last 6 months as well. So I just pulled this up the other day just to highlight that there's increasing interest at least from investors. So it's the first North list for biotechs and healthcare companies, and for some wonderful reason we are actually listed number 1. So I can't be too sad about that. But of course, what happens in the first 6 months is not definitive of how it's going to end. So hopefully we can continue this trend. And just to continue, I've actually pulled up the list for all Swedish biotech and life science companies as well, across main lists and the smaller ones. And we're also very nicely placed here as number 2. So hopefully this is indicative of our company that is, at least in the public viewing, is becoming increasingly interesting. And I can see that in Denmark as well, the Nordnet team there, the bank, they also highlighted us as one of their most traded shares for July among some pretty big other companies. So that's of course very pleasing. And we see it across the board. We see huge growth in number of shareholders. There's of course a lot of new Danish investors coming in, so we're looking to get the Swedish investors on board as well, as that will hopefully be a good experience for all. We have a wonderful board full of very competent people. We got new people in, Julie and Lasse, in April at the annual general assembly. These are people that have big pharma experience, specifically with market strategy and how to basically develop the route to the market or partnership. So we're very happy with that. And of course, we have a small management team, but we are very well connected and we work as a unit. And I think those who know us will say that as well. So with that, I would just like to say thank you, and went a little bit over time, but hopefully gave everyone a good impression of us. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Gustav, for that presentation. Okay, thank you, Gustav, for that presentation. So I just wanted to start first things first. As you mentioned, you have reported the H1 report, and you gave us an overview. But what would you say is the most important things and the highlights, if you had to, pick one or two things?
I think it goes without saying that, of course, the transitioning where you have a founder that steps off as the CEO is a huge thing. And when it happened, I think a lot of us internally in the team, as well as investors, were a bit insecure about which direction is this going to go. But Dorte has been very adamant that this is, we continue as usual. I'm just the chairman. I can set a better direction when I have control of the board. And other than that, it's the intention is that we just need to continue what we're doing, because we can see that we're progressing somewhat slowly sometimes, but we are progressing, and with time it should be good.
Right. And I think also you mentioned a new hire. Is that correct?
A new hire. I mean, we have a couple new board members as well, and we've hired in some new personnel for the clinical team as well. So, I mean, of course, now that we're looking to commence a new phase 2A trial pretty soon, it's important as well that we have people that can assist us with all the tasks that are important there. But we try to to be a bit conscious about not taking on too many people as well, where we can complicate things unnecessarily. So we like to give people a lot of responsibility, and hopefully that pays back as well with time.
Right. And also again, you during the summer you raised cash. You mentioned 10 million SEK. Just briefly, can't you explain for us how will these funds be allocated and what milestones will they allow you to reach?
Yeah, so I mean, these funds were specifically allocated to basically expand the study. So the study is fully funded now, and I mean that's of course something that we're very pleased to see. And I mean, aside from that, of course, we know for now that we don't have funding for a phase 2B that would eventually come afterwards, of course. So this is, of course, something that myself and the board are constantly discussing, like how should we strategize around the funding strategy here now. We can see that we have good momentum. We have quite a lot of interest. So we're ready to capitalize on opportunities like you saw here in the summer when we raised 10 million SEK while everyone was at the beach. So that was, of course, super pleasing that we could execute fast. And I think that's very that's a testimonial to the type of company that we are. We've had some struggles on the stock for some years, but we have momentum now, and I think that's very that's a very strong feeling to have.
Right. And before we go, I'll focus on the study. I just want to follow up again on the financing part here, and it would be interesting sort of to hear you resonate a little bit on PILA's financing strategy moving forward here, because this will of course be an essential piece for the company.
Yeah, and I mean, of course there's a number of things that we would like financed in the future as well. I mean, of course we have a couple of smaller projects as well that could be very interesting to potentially raise capital for, aside from just so we can expand into becoming more of a platform company that doesn't just rely on a phase 2 ready diabetes track, but where we can expand to also have a cardiovascular track or potentially a pain track. I mean, I think that would also give investors some comfort to know that we're looking to also broaden our view, but of course not lose sight of what's the most important. But financing strategy wise, I mean, of course, I can't really comment on when the next financing round will be. But like I said, we're always assessing what the best opportunities are, and we're ready to strike when they come.
Right. And so if we go a little bit more into detail related to this phase 2A trial that you mentioned, you now have financing in place for, that will also include obesity endpoints, correct?
Yes, it will include the endpoint of basically determining whether it can regulate body weight or not. And what the specific benchmark for this is, of course, very subjective. But I believe many of the other molecules that have been in trials in the past, it's been whether it can reduce body weight by 5%, for example. So we will see. But we're of course we're very excited. I mean, we haven't been in the clinic for a couple of years. We had to go back to do extended tox studies, and now we're back and we can do 3 months trials. So that's of course very pleasing. And I know the team is working very hard on getting the CTA, the clinical trial application, ready. And it should be ready to be sent in pretty soon, and then hopefully we can get quick approval from the ethics committee in England and get started.
Right. So a short follow up to that then would be: could you give some indication on maybe how many patients and the timeline for this trial?
It will be around 30 patients, and they will be overweight type 2 diabetics, and the study will be conducted in England. And from the best of my knowledge, the CRO we're working with, they're a bit cautious, but we're looking to get results within a year from the trial start. So of course we hope that it can be a lot sooner, because given that it's only 3 months dosing, it depends on recruitment rates and stuff like this. But we're hopeful that we can progress well into 2025 as well, and continuously deliver updates, of course, on how quick recruitment is going and how well patients are taking the drug. So.
Great. I think we have time for a short answer to this question as well. The last one then. I mean, you're focusing on type 2 diabetes as well as obesity, which are very competitive markets and huge sort of cash inflow into these markets. But what will be PILA's sort of advantage here, do you think, or do you envision?
Well, I think there's two advantages. I think for one, it's an oral treatment, and I think from what we hear within the industry, it's that most of the next generation molecules are being developed for oral delivery. So that's of course great that we already have a technology that has been proven. Of course, you can always tweak the formulation to be different, but I think definitely oral. And then I think that we're the only ones doing TRPV1 antagonists. There's nobody else doing it. And we have use patents for obesity and diabetes, so they're not going to start development here and now because they're likely not going to get any market share unless they challenge it. So from that point of view, I think it's interesting, and because it's such a differentiated type of mechanism of action than what we see is on the market with GLP-1 analogs, for example, and now you have amylin as well coming through, and CB1 receptors, which are quite similar to TRPV1 receptors. So it's definitely a showcase of many of the big pharma companies are looking to expand their horizons just beyond GLP-1s, and I think we could fit into that. Of course, if we can prove that it's safe and it's tolerable and it actually can reduce weight and give some kind of protection of the heart, I don't see a reason why they would not want to talk to us. Let's put it that way.
Okay, great. So Gustav, thanks a lot for the update.
Thank you so much, Philip.